Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about kind of piggybacks onto everything we've been talking about so far. We still are going to be dealing with this idea of scarcity. And because of scarcity, um, once again, we have unlimited wants and needs, limited productive resources. Every society, it doesn't matter if you're the United States, that is a fairly wealthy country, or your poorest countries. They all have to figure out how they're going to make the best use of their limited productive resources. And remember, productive resources are land, labor, and capital. And remember that capital is the equipment, the tools, the machines, the building. That's your physical capital, anything that is man-made that we use to make something else. And then that human capital is the education, experience, knowledge that we gain to increase productivity. So we have to figure out, given the constraints in our country of the resources we have, that we are going to produce. So to solve this problem, every society must answer three questions, including the United States. We have to decide what goods and services are we going to produce, how are we going to produce those goods and services, and who will consume those goods and services. And so every country has to create what's called an economic system. They have to decide how they're going to answer those questions. And the three types of systems are traditional, command, and market. So the first one, um, the uh, the traditional economy, decisions are based on customs and historical precedent. So, however it was done in the past, your parents did it that way, your grandparents did it that way. They pass um, these traditions down from generation to generations. These are smaller tribal cultures, cultures that have a caste system, which means people perform the same work regardless of their potential. If your parents did it, you are locked into that job. So, once again, not a lot of technology in these economies, um, very old and traditional. Command, also known as a centralized economy, the government answers the questions of what to produce, how to produce, and who's going to get it. The government plans this, they determine how the goods are going to be produced. And these are more of your communist countries, North Korea, Cuba, the former Soviet Union was like this, China's like this. Um, and then the third one is market economy or decentralized economy. This is what the United States has, where decisions are guided by buyers and sellers that interact together. It's called a voluntary exchange. Make sure you get that term in your notes. Voluntary exchange is taking place. And we do that using what's called the price system. A seller will put a price on something, and as a buyer, we will communicate to the seller if the price is too high, or if the price is too low, or if the price is just right. If everyone who wants it can get it, the price is just right. If it's too high, it's going to sit on the shelf, and we're going to tell them by not buying it that your price is too high. If it's too low, you're going to run into shortages of a particular product. And so the goal is to try and price your product or service at just the right amount so that you don't have any surpluses or shortages. A couple other terms that we use for market economy: the price system, free enterprise, capitalism, and laissez-faire. Make sure you understand that laissez-faire means hands off, and that means we don't want any government involvement. We want the government to stay out as much as possible. Um, and really, there are four economic systems: command and market. We talk about them in their purest form, but there is no such thing as a pure command, a pure market, or even a pure traditional economy. Every single economy, make sure you know that. All economies are mixed economies because they all exhibit characteristics of both command economies and market economies. We call ours a market economy, but we all know that the government is very involved in regulating every type of business that there's out there. And even in your strictest command economies, North Korea, Cuba, you still have individuals who can have a farmer's market, or they can have some sort of trade that they're very good at, that they can market that either good or service. So even in your strictest command economies, you have some form of market, and even in your freest economies, you still have some government involvement. So every society, regardless of its political structure, must develop an economic system to determine how it's going to use its productive resources to answer the three questions as a society: what are we going to produce, how are we going to produce it, and who's going to get it. There are economic goals and there are societal values, and sometimes these conflict with each other, and some of these goals are more important in a certain type of economy than the other. Economic efficiency. This is a goal of most economies because resources are scarce. One of the goals is to maximize what you can produce given the available resources. Here in the United States, we don't make things that people don't want. We don't make VCR players anymore. We don't make 8-track tape players anymore for the most part. We have new technology, and as soon as the new technology is developed, we stop making the old things because people don't want them. That would be a waste of natural resources, capital resources, and human resources. Economic freedom, that is the freedom to make your own choice in an economy. We get to decide here in the United States what we buy, where we work. We get to own our own private property. If we want to own a business, we can become entrepreneurs. That's not necessarily the case in every economy. Economic security. People do not like uncertainty. And so one of the things that they look for is a reassurance that goods and services are going to be available and needed and that they will get paid on time. And so sometimes economic systems create safety nets, which are just programs to protect people when hard times in the economy fall on them. So some of the things we have here in the United States, if you're unemployed, you can get unemployment. Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is insurance, medical insurance for older people. Medicaid is for low-income people. We have Social Security so that the older generation can get some sort of income. And then FEMA is for emergency management at the federal level. And if there is a natural disaster, FEMA will come in and help with those disasters. The last two, economic equity. Equity just means equality or fairness. So every society must decide how it's going to divide its economic pie. And sometimes this is through the redistribution of wealth. Should everyone get the same share of goods and services? Should your consumption be based on what you produce and what you produce only? How much should society provide for those who are unable or unwilling to work? And so, in some societies and even in the United States, those people who are wealthier pay a higher percentage of taxes. And we take those taxes from the wealthy and we actually redistribute them to the poor and the elderly. And then the final economic goal is economic growth. An economy must grow to provide jobs for people joining the workforce. And it must grow to increase income, which increases the standard of living. And an increased standard of living is something that every generation strives for. There's always this hope that the next generation is better off than the last generation. And in recent history, they've talked about, and there's a big concern that your generation will be one of the first generations to actually not be as well off and do as well as your parents. Innovation is another important thing when we're talking about economic growth. Innovation is the process of bringing new methods, products, ideas into use, and you have to have innovation where people are constantly thinking about new ideas in order to have economic growth. When we look at these 5 goals, some of them are more suited for a market economy and some of them are more suited for a command economy. So a market economy, this is where people get to decide, where we as individuals in the United States get to determine what it is that we want to produce. We get to decide how we're going to produce it, and we get to decide who's going to get it based on how much money we have and if we value it or not. So economic efficiency, growth, and freedom are the 3 that are most important in a market economy. Not that we don't have security and equity, because we do. Those are also, but they're not the most important. The ones that a market economy would really focus on are those 3. A command economy, economic security and equity. The idea of the government wants to take care of everyone and provide these safety nets, and then they would make sure that everyone shared equally. Here in the United States, those are the less important goals than the first 3. Sometimes when we look at the values of society, some of the economic goals that they have might conflict with that. When you have environmental protection agencies that says, okay, we realize that production is very important, but we also have to keep in mind that the environment is also important. So environmental protection may conflict with economic growths. Safety nets, taking money from the rich and redistributing that wealth to the poor and to the elderly might also slow down economic growth. So nations must prioritize their goals. And once again, each choice that the government makes or the society makes comes with some sort of trade-off. If we decide growth is more important, the environment may take a back seat. If we decide that environment is more important, then growth is going to take a back seat. Safety net's the same thing. If we decide we want to more evenly distribute the economy, those at the top may not want to work as much, realizing that they're going to have to pay a lot more in taxes to give it to those who don't have it.